Hello and welcome back to On The Grid Podcast, Season 4, Episode 32. And we are back reviewing Circuit of the Americas, the US Grand Prix. F1 is back after a 3-week hiatus, and it did not disappoint. Fantastic sprint weekend, and join with me as ever is Adrian Keita. How are you today?
Italia, da, 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 da. That's all I need to say. You can start the video now. We know this was a glorious weekend for me. Less for your boys, the better for my boys. A beautiful one too, and I could have cried, and I did actually cry. On the way back from Luton Airport whilst I was stuck in traffic, listening to the live coverage of the race. So, yeah, I was on holiday, but I did catch the whole weekend. Did have a bit of a cry, was a bit emotional. The first Ferrari 1-2 in the United States since Indianapolis in 2006. So it's been a long time coming. And finally, we've broken that duck and got back to winning ways in the US. So yeah, certainly let's get into the episode. I've had a good weekend, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. So, like I said, it will be a very good episode for you. And we'll kick things off. We'll go straight into our driver ratings because we've got so much to cover. We got the sprint race, we got sprint qualifying, normal qualifying, and the main race itself. So let's kick things off. Charles Leclerc. Now I know where this is going already. Sprint qualified third, sprint race fourth, qualified fourth, and finished first. Now the sprint, nothing to shout about in the sprint race. Beaten by his teammate quite comfortably, wasn't able to get the move done on Norris, but you've got to be opportunistic at Coates in turn one, and he was absolutely that. And it was a brilliant triple overtake on sides. Norris Verstappen took advantage of Norris and Verstappen. I think we all knew there was going to be something going on into turn one there, and I think Leclerc capitalised on that brilliantly. And once he was in front, he never looked back, and he was fantastic right the way through the Grand Prix, and it was a fantastic drive. Third race win of the season, which means he equals the amount of race wins that Norris has this season. So there we go. He's only 22 points behind Lando Norris as well. So take that as you will. But it's a 10 out of 10 for me. It can't be anything other.
As there was once a famous quote by Andy Tate, the Man United supporter, as Ethan will know. Second half of the season, we're on a title charge. But I don't think that title charge will come. But I think he could pit Lando Norris to second. I think Lando obviously has the better car, but I think Lando is slowly crumbling under the immense pressure that he holds as title challenger in loose quotation marks. In loose quotation marks, as we've said on on these podcasts so often. But like you've mentioned, the sprint shootout and the sprint wasn't anything to write home about. He wasn't beaten comfortably by Sainz. I think Sainz took his move on Leclerc very well. I mean, they were squabbling for a couple of laps. Carlos Sainz had the better of Leclerc, and then Sainz pounced on Lando Norris's mistake into turn one on the last lap to get himself up into P2. But in the race, it was normal service resumed for Leclerc. Absolute beautiful move into turn one to catch everyone napping, and then just led the race from there. Very comfortable. Wasn't really threatened by Verstappen or by Sainz in the race. I mean, the gaps were fluctuating quite a bit, but it was very, very comfortable for Leclerc, and a very, very, very well deserved 10 out of 10.
Absolutely. And let's move on to his teammate, Carlos Sainz. Now, he qualified for sprint in fifth and finished second. He qualified for the main race in third and finished second as well. Now, I'm always wanting to give him a 10 out of 10 as well, but I have gone for a 9 out of 10. A very, very good drive as well from Sainz. I think that maybe he didn't have the pace in the race that Leclerc had. He struggled a bit with the tyres, I think. I think it did help that Leclerc got past Verstappen at the start as well, whereas Sainz didn't. So he had to battle with him. He had to do the undercut, which meant that his tyres were a bit older and didn't necessarily have the pace in them. But two P2 finishes in the sprint and the main race. And you've got to say, Ferrari can win the Constructors' Championship. They have taken about 30 points out of McLaren this weekend. They are 8 points behind Red Bull, and they are 48 points behind McLaren. They've taken about 30 points out of them this weekend alone. So never say never. And how nice would that be for being a Lewis Hamilton fan to go into next season with Ferrari as constructors champions? That'd be really nice. So I am egging Ferrari on and wanting them to do well for the remainder of this season, as it makes me look forward to going into next season a whole lot more. But 9 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz, a very, very good performance, and he's showing what people are gonna be missing next season with him stuck in a Williams.
Did somebody say second half of the season we're going on a title charge? Drivers and constructors. You put it perfectly well there. We've taken a mass amount of points out of McLaren. Um, but yeah, I'm not agreeing with you. I've not gone with a 9 out of 10. I've gone for a very biased 10 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. I don't think he could have done anything else in the sprint. He was very much flawless, bar Verstappen obviously driving into the distance, and having P1 more or less wrapped up in the sprint. And then in the race, um, he obviously was engaged in the little Verstappen Norris battle at the start, and then Leclerc just absolutely steamed down the inside of everyone and just took the lead. So from that point onwards, it was going to be a little bit harder for Carlos Sainz to get the victory. And he made the undercut work very well on Max Verstappen. He overtook him via the pit stop, and from then on, very comfortable. Didn't look back, and secured a very, very nice 1-2 for Ferrari. So yeah, I've gone both Ferrari drivers 10 out of 10. They had a very, very solid weekend, very solid point scoring as well. Hopefully Mexico doesn't create too much chaos, because we know that circuit is very much a mishmash, let's say, for Ferrari. It's not been exactly the perfect track record for Ferrari at Mexico. But there's a hoping that Mexico turns to be another points haul, and another good points haul that we gain on Red Bull and McLaren. So yeah, both Ferrari drivers 10 out of 10, flawless weekends.
Yeah, I think what unstuck Sainz a little bit was the fact that he was starting on the outside, whereas you've got Leclerc starting in the inside. So when Verstappen and Norris have their bit of a clash, Leclerc's got a free track almost, whereas Sainz, they're going into his path. So that might have hampered him a little bit. Moving on now, though, to Max Verstappen, qualified for the sprint and finished the sprint in first, qualified for the race in second and finished third. I've gone for a 10 out of 10. I don't know what more he could have done. I genuinely don't. He's gained 5 points on his biggest title rival. And I say that again, I say that in loose terms because he is his closest competitor. But I think in the sprint, he pulled it out of the bag. It was a fantastic lap in qualifying. And then he sort of had an easy win in the sprint, his first wins since before the summer break, I think it was. And then in qualifying, he put it on the front row. He was always going to go for the inside. You knew he was going to go for the inside. And we can talk about that incident at the end all we like, but it's funny how it gets put in a different spotlight now compared to how it did 3 years ago in 2021. And that's all I'm going to say on that matter, is that it's being framed a lot differently now than what it was then. So 10 out of 10 for Verstappen. He done everything he needed to do, and he's reaching for the title with that second hand as well as the one hand that's already on the trophy. So yeah, brilliant performance, and that is a champion's performance this weekend.
Yeah, and once again, I've gone with another 10 out of 10. I feel very happy. F1's back. I'm just going to hand out 10 out of 10s left, right, and centre, because why not? But you're completely right with Max Verstappen. He's done everything he can in his power to fend off his title rival in loose terms again, and gained more points on him again. So for Max Verstappen, all he needs to do throughout the rest of the races is just finish them. simply just finished them, and he's got the championship wrapped up. I believe the title, the lead is creeping up to 60 points again. So whether Lando Norris actually has a chance to close that gap again, I don't think he will. I reckon his best chance will be at Mexico, where the downforce of a McLaren could be pivotal, and it could be a big factor in McLaren gaining points in their bid to become constructors champions once again. But Max Verstappen, similar to the two Ferrari drivers up ahead of him in P1 and P2, had very much a flawless weekend. Sprint race winner once again. He's the only sprint race winner this season. Let's put that into perspective. He's the out and out force in the sprints. Nobody can beat him. Nobody can touch him. Nobody's touched his record as of yet. And in the race, yes, he was always going to fight Lando Norris for the lead. But then again, he fended off Lando Norris very well. His defending into the braking zone at turn, what turn is it? Is it turn 11 or turn 12? Which one? I'm trying to remember the circuit. Might be turn. Anyway, down the back straight into the left hander into the little kink. Yeah, his defending skills there were absolutely tremendous, keeping McLaren and Lando Norris at bay. And then McLaren obviously cry because Lando Norris overtook him off the track, and they're moaning that that shouldn't be a penalty, and it's all for the good of the sport. But like you've pointed out, it's a completely different light in 2024 than it was in 2021. And all I'm going to say on that matter, McLaren, Lando Norris, sore losers. Max Verstappen, 10 out of 10.
Absolutely agree with that. There, I think it's turn 12 back straight. I was trying to work out, do the mental arithmetics. But I think it's turn 12 is the corner at the end of the back straight. Moving on now to Lando Norris. He qualified for the sprint in fourth and finished third. Qualified for the race in first and finished fourth. It's a 7 out of 10 for Lando Norris, because I don't think I can grade him any higher, realistically. He has shot himself in the foot a little bit in the sprint qualifying because I think that he should have been on the front row at least. In the same way that for the race qualifying, Verstappen put it on the front row to give him the best opportunity, lining up alongside Norris. That's not what Norris did in the sprint. He wasn't able to pull out the lap, and then as well to lose second place in the last couple of laps as he did will be disappointing. But obviously, the main race is where it's judged the most, and I've got to say, I think he was a little bit naive going into turn one. Max Verstappen was always going to try it up the inside. He has got to block him off. He has got to move across as soon as the lights go out. As soon as he got a better launch than him, let's not forget. He had a better launch than Verstappen off the line. He needs to move completely across to the left, shut him off. Give him the opportunity to go down the inside because you know what Verstappen's going to do. Everybody knew what he's going to do. I knew what he was going to do watching it. He's always going to want to try and claim that corner, go down the inside. Norris needed to be a bit smarter, a bit more tactical in that situation, and really block him off. And after that, he dropped down to fourth, and you've got to say he was fairly anonymous in the first stint. He didn't make any grounds into reducing the deficit, get on the podium ahead of Sainz or Verstappen, and then again, people will say that it's bias and the penalty was undeserved and whatnot, but he shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. The McLaren was so much faster than the Red Bull this weekend. He should have had the move done with many laps to go. And then on top of that, there was the miscommunication between the team and, he not giving back the place and getting the penalty and losing the podium. But it's a 7 out of 10. I can't give him any higher than that. So a very poor weekend and not what he needs at this stage of the season.
And on this one, I'll completely agree with you as well. I've also given Lando Norris a 7 out of 10 because to say that you are in the best car, and we said this at the start of the episode that Leclerc has now the same amount of wins that Lando Norris does. And bearing in mind, Charles Leclerc is not in the quickest car by any stretch of the imagination. I just think Lando Norris this weekend, very naive, very poor mistakes. In the sprint, we saw that lockup, which gave Sainz an opportunistic move to claim P2 in the sprint. In the race, what we saw at turn one, like you mentioned, Lando Norris has just been crumbling ever since the media's portrayed him as a title challenger, which at this moment in time, I don't think you can call him a title challenger anymore. I think Charles Leclerc has more of a right to be a title challenger with him being on Lando Norris's neck so much, now being only 20 or so points away from Lando Norris. Um, and with Lando Norris, I think it's a similar situation to what happened to Leclerc in 22. I just don't think he's ready for a title challenge. I just don't think he's ready. He's got the car underneath him, but I just don't think he's ready. I don't think he's got, that extra oomph. I think he's still prone to a mistake that Leclerc showed in 22, and we've seen Lando Norris show the exact same amount of mistakes that happened to Leclerc in 22, that's happened to him this season. So it's not. It's definitely not the end for Lando Norris when it comes to challenging for titles. I just think that it's a step too much for Lando Norris to gain this gap back uh, in the championship. I just don't think he's got it in him. Um, by all means, Lando Norris proved me wrong and win the championship, but I just don't think this year will be his year. And we saw exactly why in Kota. Plenty of mistakes, not a lot of oomph, not a lot of desire, and just yeah, it just was a bit drab from Lando Norris. So I've also settled with a 7 out of 10.
And next up is Oscar Piastri. And I've also gone for a 7 out of 10 here because it was a very, very anonymous weekend from Piastri. So he's qualified for the sprint in 16th and finished 10th. I know he was very unlucky because it was a track limits violation which knocked him out of qualifying, and it was millimeters in it, but the rules are the rules. Moving on to the race, he qualified in fifth and finished fifth. Um, and actually, I think something that's been a little bit overlooked here is the fact that Piastri, when he found out that Norris got that 5 second penalty, backed off. He finished sort of half a second behind Norris with that penalty applied. And, if the team didn't clock that or if, Piastri ignored that, then, Lando Norris would have two less points in the championship. So he does have Piastri to thank in that moment, because if it's anybody else, if it's any of the other cars behind him, then Lando Norris is finishing fifth when he should have been on the podium and he started from pole. So a little moment I think didn't get recognised. And I think from Piastri's side, it was very much support Norris in whatever way he could. There was no way he was going to challenge the front four, especially in that first stint with Norris being the rear of the four runners. But yeah, it's not been the best weekend for Piastri, but I'm sure he'll be back to his usual ways soon enough.
But yeah, I've also settled with a 7 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. I mean, the sprint kind of started the weekend and showed where McLaren were going to be. Because Oscar Piastri P16 in the sprint shootout. And from that point onwards, you're thinking, my jaw was swung wide open. I was completely shocked at what happened. For Oscar Piastri not to go through to SQ2 was bamboozling. I was just shocked. And then in the sprint, yes, he clawed back 6 positions, but that's not good enough to get you into the points. And then in the race, nowhere to be seen. Was completely phased out from a top four. And just kind of drove his own race, did his own thing. And yeah, like you mentioned, support Lando Norris as much as possible. And I guess papaya rules were in play there. To say, yeah, keep this gap as wide open as possible so Lando Norris finishes as high up in the points as he can. So yeah, both McLarens very drab, but I do see them turning it on in Mexico. But for Kota. I think it's a weekend to forget for the two of them.
Moving on next to George Russell. He qualified for the sprint in second and finished fifth. He qualified for the main race in sixth. However, he started from the pit lane following that heavy crash and finished sixth. And it's 10 out of 10. He started from the pit lane, and the crash that he suffered was identical to Hamilton. And Toto Wolff has come on the record and said that crash was not Hamilton's fault. It was the car which was actually broken, which they failed to repair following the sprint. And I would assume that that would be the exact same case in Russell's instance as well. So to start from the pit lane and to finish sixth, I suppose you could maybe knock it down because he's qualified where he started. He's finished where he started even. But I think to go from the pit lane to sixth is a mighty performance and very, very impressive from George Russell.
Yeah, I've knocked it down one. I've not given him a 10, I've given him a 9. The sprint, yeah, it started his weekend started well. Qualifying in P2 for the sprint. But then kind of was chasing shadows when he saw the Ferrari and well who finished ahead of him? The Verstappen finished ahead of him with Sainz, Leclerc, Norris, and then he was in fifth. But it did kind of look like he was chasing shadows in the sprint. I don't know whether he just didn't turn the tires on or whether it was just the car was just completely not with it. But as soon as the two Ferraris were up ahead of him, he kind of just bolted, kind of went backwards and kind of was getting closed in by Hamilton, but Hamilton didn't home him in enough. And then to qualify sixth, yes, he did have that heavy crash and had to start from the pit lane and then finish sixth. But I think he was always going to finish sixth. I think you look at people like Perez and Hulkenberg and Lawson and Colapinto and Magnussen, and I think those drivers just didn't have what it took to finish in the top six. I think Russell was always going to finish there no matter what. And he obviously worked his strategy very well. Was able to finish well inside the points and showed what a good performance and what a good drive he can do on his day. So by all accounts, it's a deserved 9 out of 10. Maybe it could be looked at as a 10 out of 10, but I've given him a 9. I've settled with a 9. I think I've handed out too many 10 out of 10s this weekend so far, and I think there's actually a few more to come. So stay tuned for that one. But yeah, 9 out of 10 for George Russell.
Yeah, not to spoil too much, but I have actually given out four 10 out of 10s this weekend, which I think is probably the most ever. I mean, we've had three of them already. We'll just wait and see who the fourth is for. Sergio Perez up next, and I can say it's not for Sergio Perez. He started the sprint in 11th and finished ninth. He qualified for the race in 10th and finished seventh. And it's a 7 out of 10. It's a solid result. It's nothing special. It's nothing awful. It's just it's a decent job. It'll be a bit disappointed that he was overtaken late on by Russell, but there's positives to take, I think, for Perez. He's still nowhere near Max Verstappen, but it's a decent performance. But I suspect, and I'm sure many others do, that his races run at Red Bull, and I think it's inevitable that there'll be a change over the winter break, especially with Red Bull not able to mount a fight back in the constructors, really. So I think it will be a matter of time. Yeah, it feels like the nails in the coffin for Perez at Red Bull.
Yeah, for Sergio Perez, I've gone with a 6 out of 10. I just think that, like you mentioned there, I think his race has run. But fun fact, I did actually spot a report before I go into my average rating for Sergio Perez that Yuki Tsunoda is set to do a driver test at Red Bull over the winter. So whether Yuki Tsunoda gets promoted to the Red Bull team could be very interesting. But then who takes his seat at VCOB? That's also very interesting. But that's a story for a different day, I think. But for Sergio Perez, very flat. You look at his sprint, he's only gained 2 places. He's not even got inside the points. In qualifying, He's qualified P10, nowhere near his teammate. It's just very flat. There's no. I don't think when Sergio Perez was at Force India, when he was at Racing Point, there was a lot of excitement about him. But now it's the hype has just seems to died down. Whether he can bring some magic at Mexico, it's yet to be seen. But it's just very flat for Sergio Perez. I just think his race is slowly being run down in Formula One as a whole. I think his time could be coming very soon. I just don't think he's the competitor he used to be before because at Red Bull it could be said that he had a car that is able to produce him a podium near enough every weekend over the last 2 or 3 seasons, but he's just not been able to deliver that. He's been very much stuck, and he's just performing just very under par. P7, a couple of points gained, but Red Bull are essentially fighting a losing battle. They're likely going to finish P3 in the Constructors' Championship with Ferrari catching them. So yeah, it seems to me that it could be time for Perez to leave Red Bull and potentially to leave the sport. But yeah, very drab, very average. Yeah, 6 out of 10.
Up next is Nico Hulkenberg. Now, he qualified for the sprint in sixth and finished eighth. He qualified for the race in 12th and finished eighth. And it's a 9 out of 10. And it's not far away from being a 10, in my point of view. He's done almost everything he can. 2 eighth place finishes. And it's a very, very solid result for Haas. And they move above VCARB in the constructors. So they're up to sixth in the Constructors' Championship, which what a result that would be at the end of the season. Because I know, cast your minds back to the start of the season, and we were I had them predicted 19th and 20th in my championship predictions, and I think many other people did as well. There was no hope in Haas at all this season. So to do what they've done, Hulkenberg and Magnussen, it's been a very commendable effort, and they've done a fantastic job.
Am I going to be trigger happy and give him a 10 out of 10? Um, hmm. I don't think I will. I'm not going to be trigger happy because the two drivers that followed behind him, I've gone for very high ratings of them as well. So I'm going to settle with a 9 out of 10. Two very good points finishes in the sprint and in a race. Let's not forget Nico Hulkenberg started outside the top 10 in the race and was able to get himself inside the points with a very good strategy from Haas. And he's just delivering on a different scale. I'm just really sad that he's leaving the Sauber and he's likely going to have to struggle for a season there because they've still gained 0 points in 2024. And it looks like Nico Hulkenberg is likely going to be at a basement club until Audi come into the sport, unless Sauber deliver something special for him in 2025. Um, Very, very special driver. Still yet to gain a podium, but hopefully his dream at Audi will finally come to fruition and he'll finally gain a podium finish for Audi because this driver is special. And long may the point scoring haul for Haas continue, and maybe they can claw a bit closer to the top five, which could be very exciting. It would be very nice. I don't think they are able to do that, but as many points as possible now from now on until the end of the season, please, Nico Hulkenberg, because you are a very, very special man and a very, very good driver. So 9 out of 10 from me for Nico Hulkenberg.
Liam Lawson up next, qualified for the sprint in 15th and finished 16th. Qualified for the race in 15th, started 19th and finished 9th. Now, what a return for Formula One for Liam Lawson. Only his 7th race in Formula One, but it is not a 7 out of 10. It is what you, Adrian, are holding up, how many fingers you're holding up, and that is a 10 out of 10. This was an exceptional performance, and I don't really know what else to say. It was just fantastic. From start to finish, he made the strategy work. I think he started on the hards, which looked to be a bit of a dodgy decision at the start. Didn't have very good pace to begin with, but he made it work and he had a fantastic race and claimed some 2 points, which I don't think he was expecting lining up on the grid on 19th.
Hey, it's two more points than Guan Yu Zhou and Valtteri Bottas have, am I right? So what a return. What a man. What a legend. What he's just a chilled out guy that Liam Lawson is, isn't he? He just took it in his stride. Don't get me wrong, in the sprint it looked a little bit shaky. And he was having some fantastic battles with Fernando Alonso, but to pull that out of the bag in the race and finish ninth, finishing in the points from essentially the back of the grid, after receiving a 60 place grid penalty. I don't know how he's got into ninth place after starting 60th. But yeah, tremendous. 10 out of 10, well deserved. All I've said everything. Yeah, 10 out of 10. Amazing weekend.
Franco Colapinto next qualified for the sprint in 10th and finished 12th. Qualified for the race in 17th and finished 10th. And it's a 9 out of 10 for Franco. Again, it's almost a 10 out of 10. We could be having 5 or 6 10 out of 10s here because some of the performances up and down the grid have been purely exceptional. But I think qualifying is holding him back a little bit, and he did lose a couple of places in the sprint. Maybe if he'd managed to nab a point, that would have definitely been a 10 out of 10. But he was the quicker of the Williams. I think we've seen Alex Albon look a little bit phased by Franco and the sort of the energy he's brought. And yeah, it's a point for Colapinto, and he continues to stake his claim for a Formula One seat next season. Now, I have seen a bit of a rumor, and this goes similar to the point you made a little bit earlier for Yuki Tsunoda, that Liam Lawson is going to be getting a promotion to Red Bull next season. Franco Colapinto is going to be in a V Cup alongside Yuki Tsunoda, which I don't know what to think about that, because it would not make sense from a Red Bull point of view, because they've got a driver waiting in the wings who is seemingly about to win Formula 2 in Isaac Hadjar. So who knows whether this is just a bit of speculation, whether this is actually there's substance to this, but he's deserving of a spot in Formula One. He's been fantastic since he's come in, and he is I think he's 18th in the Drivers' Championship. He's ahead of both Stakes, who were 21st and 23rd in a 20 driver championship, and the man who he replaced, who had a season and a half and hasn't got as many points as he's got in 4 races.
You've summed it up perfectly there. But I've gone trigger happy. I've gone with another 10 out of 10. I think for all of these drivers, I'm just glad Formula One's back. It's actually brought a smile to my face because, like you mentioned, some of these performances up and down the grid. You've obviously seen Leclerc and Sainz 1-2. You've seen Liam Lawson. You've seen the likes of George Russell pull out the bag. You've seen Verstappen fend off Lando Norris. And don't get me wrong, P10 being behind a guy that's making his Formula One debut for the second time, um, isn't nice. Don't get me wrong. Franco's been in the sport for a bit longer this season, but Liam Lawson's done an absolutely tremendous job, and he had previous experience from last season. But Franco Colapinto deservedly needs a seat in Formula One, and is just delivering points left, right, and centre. Alex Albon looks phased and seems phased because he's absolutely nowhere in terms of Franco Colapinto. And yeah, I may have gone trigger happy with a 10 out of 10, but all of these drivers have seemed to have pulled out something out the bag, and have given us a lot of excitement this weekend. So Franco Colapinto, without a shadow of a doubt, we've given Liam Lawson a 10 out of 10. Franco deserves one as well. 10 out of 10.
Up next is Kevin Magnussen. He qualified for the sprint in 8th and finished 7th. He qualified for the race in 9th and finished 11th. Very unlucky to miss out on points in the race here, but it is an 8 out of 10 from me. Don't know what more he could do. Obviously, he was fighting with Colapinto on that second stint, and Lawson as well, I believe, actually. But a good effort from him. Got points in the sprint, beat his teammate as well. And then he very, very consistent all throughout the weekend. He's always qualifying in and around the top 10. And, outqualified his teammate and just couldn't hold on to that point. Got done over, like I said, by Lawson and Colapinto. So unlucky for Kevin Magnussen, but it's his. He's got 5 races left in F1, and this is a good way to mark his ending with a couple of good performances.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that one. I've also gone with an 8 out of 10. You can't give him more than his teammate. He finished inside the points with a 9. So I have gone with an 8. Very unlucky not to get in the points, but I think Lawson and Colapinto did have his number in the end. Very good sprint race to finish inside the points, starting from P8 to finish P7. Overall, I think he's just had a very good weekend. Points scored in the sprint. Unfortunate to miss out in the race, but overall, very good weekend for Kevin Magnussen. Like you said, the Kevin Magnussen farewell tour begins, and these last couple of performances, he's just got to savor and show what he's got. Um, maybe a potential team could have him as a reserve driver, or he could feature in IndyCar or Formula E or whatnot. But he's going to do himself no harm with putting in some very good performances in the last part of the season. But yeah, 8 out of 10, good weekend. And yeah, overall, the Kevin Magnussen farewell tour continues into Mexico.
And the next driver up in these 1 to 10 driver ratings is Pierre Gasly, qualified for the sprint in 12th and finished 14th, qualified for the main race in 7th and finished 12th. And it's a 7 out of 10 for me. A mighty impressive effort in qualifying, particularly to put it best of the rest in 7th. But then just couldn't hold it on. I don't know what it was. I think it was a bit of strategy, a bit of lack of pace in the Alpine. Now Alpine have dropped to 9th in the Constructors' Championship. It's not been a good season for them. But there's a little bit of a highlight to this weekend. Gasly putting in a fantastic qualifying performance. So a 7 out of 10. Just not the pace there, I don't believe.
Yeah, I'll agree with you once again. 7 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly. Qualified amazingly. It just kind of all fell apart in the actual race itself. The sprint wasn't great either, dropping places, but yeah, one lap pace was fantastic for Pierre Gasly. It's just the race. The race pace was just nowhere. And like you mentioned, Alpine have gone backwards once again and not forwards. Yeah, pretty unlucky not to get himself into the points, especially from the position that he started. But when you've got a car that doesn't have race pace, I don't think you can do much more. So yeah, 7 out of 10, good qualifying, and a pretty good weekend. Just unfortunate that the race pace isn't there for Alpine.
Fernando Alonso up next, qualified for the sprint in 14th, finished 18th, qualified for the race in 8th and finished 13th. Now, for Fernando Alonso to drop from 8th to 13th, it's got to be a 4 out of 10. Very, very uncharacteristic race from him. But you look at the drivers he's qualified ahead of, he's qualified ahead of Russell, obviously, Perez, Hulkenberg, Lawson, Colapinto, and Magnussen, who he's qualified ahead and have all have finished ahead of him. Obviously, you expect Russell and Perez to get past, but for drivers like Lawson, Colapinto are starting right at the back. You don't expect that, especially for Fernando Alonso in an Aston Martin, which is still the front end of Formula B. It's still the front end behind the first sort of 4 teams. So a very uncharacteristic weekend from him.
Yeah, I've gone slap bang in the middle for Fernando Alonso. I've gone with a 5. Um, yeah, I don't know what's happening. I really don't. I had a fantastic battle with Liam Lawson in the sprint, and eventually lost out to him. And then in the race, especially to qualify in P8 and then just go backwards as similar to Pierre Gasly did. It just shows that the race pace it seems to be deterring from the Aston Martins, and Adrian knew he better be building a 2025 car because they seem to not be surviving at the moment. To be the top of the midfield at the moment as they are, um, they can count themselves lucky because I think that's all early season form. Because ever since that kind of happened, they've just gone on a downward trajectory all the way down. And yeah, it just kind of shows where Aston Martin are at the moment. They're very much a yo-yo team. One weekend they can finish both inside the points. One weekend they're absolutely nowhere to be seen. And yeah, that this weekend was one of these weekends, and for Fernando Alonso to qualify P8 and not even finish inside the points, very, very disappointing and very, very average. So I've settled with a 5 out of 10.
And Yuki Tsunoda up next. He qualified in ninth for the sprint and finished 11th, and qualified for the race in 11th and finished 14th. It's a 5 out of 10. I think he was a little bit miffed that Lawson actually came out in front of him after the pit stops, and it did seem to anger him a little bit, which I'm sure he's has every right to be. But I think it was just the different strategy, and Lawson done such a fantastic job on those hard tyres, made the difference. So a 5 out of 10. And I think these next 5 races are very, very crucial for the long-term career of Yuki Tsunoda in Formula One. If he comprehensively beats Lawson, you've got to turn around and says, right, he is the guy you promote in Red Bull. But if we see performances like this weekend where it's Lawson that beats Tsunoda, Lawson is going to be the favourite for that Red Bull seat. And there's nothing Tsunoda is going to be doing about it. And he is going to end up being just another driver who is in F1 for a long time without really kicking on and hitting the heights that other drivers have. So it's very, very crucial final 5 races for Yuki Tsunoda in this season.
For Yuki Tsunoda, I've also gone with a 5 out of 10. I just think, once again, to be beaten so comprehensively by your teammate who's making a second F1 debut, and to say that he started well behind you because of a fresh engine. Okay, your engine may be worse for wear than his, but I don't think he should be finishing ahead of you. It just shows the detriment and the kind of determination that Liam Lawson showed throughout the whole weekend. And Yuki Tsunoda has once again a reality check in front of him, like he did when Daniel Ricciardo joined the team last season. Yuki Tsunoda is, like you mentioned, make or break for him. Because if he doesn't put up any performances between now and until the end of the season, that driver test instead of his, it could be Liam Lawson's. So there's obviously a couple of races to go until the end of the season, but I think that these next races, like you mentioned, they're very crucial for the career of Yuki Tsunoda. Whether he's able to pull his finger out and perform in these last couple of races, we'll only have to wait and see. But it's important that Yuki Tsunoda shows himself in the best light possible, because we know the potential that he has. We know the sort of driver, the sort of aggressive driver that he is, gaining points and gaining places. He's just got to show Helmut Marko and the Chiefs at Red Bull Racing what he can do, and that he can step up into the senior team, and not the senior team from a sister team. So it's a 5 out of 10. This performance was bang average, but I'm sure we'll see the Yuki Tsunoda of old in Mexico and the races to come.
Next up on these ratings is Lance Stroll, qualified for 13th and finished 13th in the sprint, and then qualified 14th and finished 15th. It's a 4 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. I've given him the exact same grade I gave to Fernando Alonso, and that might be being slightly nice as well. So just nothing of note really from Lance Stroll all weekend. Did a very anonymous job. Whether that's the car, whether that's him, I think we know the answer, but it is what it is. Don't think we're expecting too much these days from Lance Stroll. He's not going to shock us with a podium out of nowhere. So very bang average, I think.
Yeah, I've settled. I went one lower than I gave Fernando Alonso for Lance Stroll, so I've gone with a 4 as well. I don't think I need to say anything else. Bang average, typical Lance Stroll behaviour. Just there for the vibes, and there for the money, and there for a little bit of the fame. So yeah, nothing much more to add. Lance Stroll just doing Lance Stroll things.
And up next is Alex Albon, qualified for the sprint in 18th and finished 17th, qualified for the race in 16th and finished 16th. Now, given that Franco Colapinto finished up in 10th and stormed his way through, I've gone for a 4 out of 10 for Albon. I know he had a bit of damage. I think he got a bit of damage on the first lap. So maybe he was a little bit unlucky with that. It was nursing an issue. But you've got your teammate here who's only before this weekend had four races in Formula One, and he's gone from 17th to 10th, and you're going from 16th to 16th. It'll be a concern, I'm sure. But Alex Albon is a very experienced driver. I'm sure will come through from this, but it's just not his weekend in Austin.
Once again, we've settled with the same rating. I've also gone with a 4 out of 10 for Alex Albon. Like you mentioned there, not his race weekend at all. To see his less experienced teammate absolute storm his way through the field and get himself into the points, it just shows that Alex Albon has had a bit of a shock to the system because he's had Logan Sargent as his teammate for the last year and a half, and I don't think he's been as shocked as he has been with a couple of races that Franco Colapinto has raced because Logan Sargent was nowhere near the level of Alex Albon, and Franco Colapinto shows that he has what it takes to be in Formula One and can easily outperform Alex Albon on any of given weekend. So I think Alex needs to kind of reinvigorate himself and kind of show what he's able to do in these next couple of races because once again these couple of races for Alex Albon could be crucial whether he could make a step up into some whether he can make a step up into a better team in 26 for example because it's all well and good being at Williams for the last couple of seasons but surely he's wanting a step up in his career after he's had a bit of a step down from Red Bull so it's crucial for him to kind of continue hitting the ground running and continue to show what he can do because this weekend just wasn't it for Albon.
Valtteri Bottas up next, qualified for the sprint 19th and finished 20th, qualified for the race in 18th and finished 17th. 5 out of 10. I don't have anything else to add for Valtteri Bottas. Bang average, straight down the middle, 5 out of 10. Beat his teammate, was a very, very far in front of his teammate as well. 5 out of 10. I'm tired of talking about these dustbins on wheels.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. Slap bang in the middle, 5 out of 10. Let's move on.
Esteban Ocon up next. I've gone for a 5 out of 10 again. It's sprint qualified 17th and finished 15th, qualified in 13th and finished 18th. Now, on the face of it, when your teammates qualified in 7th and finished in 12th, finishing 18th is not a good look. However, I think this is mitigated slightly by the fact that he got damage on the opening lap. He was obviously the guy that spun. I think the guy that Albon collided with and got the damage from dropped right to the back. And then from there, with that damage in hand, he was never going to be able to do too much. Very unlucky after a solid qualifying on the fringes of the points. Could have moved up and got into the points. But it wasn't to be for him this weekend.
I've got with him 4 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. Nowhere near his teammate. Comfortably beaten by his teammate. And yeah, maybe he was a little bit unlucky. Maybe he was unfortunate in the race. But it just wasn't it for him in Austin. So I've gone with a 4.
Guan Yu Zhou up next. Sprint qualified in 20th and finished 19th. Qualified for the race in 20th and finished 19th. 3 out of 10. I don't have anything else to say. Like I said, for Bottas, dustbin on wheels. The Stace is by far the worst car on the grid. Guan Yu Zhou is another driver who's only got 5 races left in F1. I can't really add anything else.
I'm glad it's going to be a short and sweet for the 2 state cars because I've gone with a 4. Simple.
And then last but not least, Lewis Hamilton, who qualified for the sprint in 7th and finished 6th, qualified for the race in 19th and did not finish. I've gone for a 4 out of 10. I feel like I'm being too harsh though, because I don't think the crash is his fault. He said after qualifying the suspension was broken, that needs to be repaired. I think he was pushing to get that repaired and start from the pit lane alongside Russell, which given the fact he was starting the race, I think he started the race in 17th, it would probably make sense. It would probably be the logical thing to do. But no, Mercedes decided not to change anything, stayed out, and on the second lap, after and watching his onboard, it's a very, very minimal steering input that he's done. And the car has just absolutely fell away. It's just gone in an opposite direction. And again, a very similar crash to Russell suffering qualifying. So I feel like I'm being too harsh here. But, it is what it is. We can't pick favourites here as much as I'd like to.
I've actually gone slap bang in the middle for Lewis Hamilton. I've settled with a five. Like you mentioned, I don't think the crash was his fault. The sprint, obviously, it wasn't amazing as well. It was very, very drab. He was catching George Russell in P5, but had to settle for P6. And then in qualifying, it was just abysmal. And then obviously he had to retire because of that crash. It crashed. He went into the gravel trap and wasn't able to collect his car out of it. So yeah, I think out of the two Mercedes drivers, obviously George Russell will be more happier, but I think Lewis Hamilton will be one who will be able to take the most out of this weekend, knowing what was wrong and knowing what needed to be done to actually finish higher up and challenge further up the field. So yeah, I've gone with slap bang in the middle, 5 out of 10, because I don't think it's too fair to just base it off the sprint. So I've just gone slap bang in the middle, make it fair, and settle with that rating for Lewis Hamilton for the whole weekend.
And then let's look at our predictions for Kosa. So we'll kick things off with our two-star predictions. And I am feeling very cocky right now because I had either a VSC or safety car in either the sprint or the race. And for the first time in 9 races, we had a safety car. I forgot what Bern Maylander looked like. And then for my other one, I had Williams to score points, which Franco Colapinto delivered for me. How did you get on in your star predictions?
Not gonna lie, I completely forgot about my star predictions. I've actually not jotted them down on my notepad, so I actually don't know what they are.
That sounds like 0 out of 2 to me.
But I'm gonna concede either way because my my predictions on a whole were abysmal. So I'm gonna concede this weekend, and let you take this weekend. And yeah, I'm just not gonna talk about my predictions. I'm just gonna stay quiet in the corner, let you take the point, and just kind of move on to next weekend.
Okay, why don't you give your sprint predictions then if you can't give your star predictions?
Well, for the sprint, like I mentioned, it was awful. I predicted Oscar Piastri to get on pole for the sprint. And we know as soon as he was out in SQ1, we know how it was going to go. So I predicted Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, and then in the sprint I went Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz. So I got a grand total of nil point out of 10.
And for my predictions, I also went for Piastri to qualify on pole and then went for Leclerc second, Norris third, Verstappen fourth. But I had Carlos Sainz in fifth. So I'll take the point for that. And then for the sprint race, I had Piastri to lead Norris, to lead Leclerc, Sainz, and Russell. So again, I'll take the 1 point for that for predicting George Russell in fifth correctly. And then moving on to the main event, I got Lando Norris on pole, correct. I had Oscar Piastri and Lewis Hamilton second and third, which was obviously incorrect. I had Leclerc fourth and Verstappen fifth. So 2 out of 5 for me on the qualifying predictions. And then I got 0 out of 5 for the race. I had Norris, Piastri, Leclerc, Hamilton, and Verstappen. So a big nil point for that. But 4 out of 20 for my predictions, and I got my two-star predictions as well. So overall, not too bad. It could be worse.
Right, so I was listening back to our episode last time, and yeah, I got nothing out of two star predictions. And in the race and in qualifying, it's also 0 out of 10. So I'm not even gonna go into it because there's no point. I've It's so poor. I look back at these predictions for Kota and they were so bad. I think this is the first donut I've dropped in the whole time of us doing predictions. And it's don't get me wrong, it's good that the race was very unpredictable, and the kind of results were unpredictable. But for my own sanity, I can't take it. I just can't do it. I can't. So yeah, qualifying Leclerc, Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, Sainz. None of those came through. Race Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, Verstappen, Hamilton. None of those came through. So take the point, run away, Ethan. Have a little cockiness moment, and you can celebrate for once.
Well, you got to celebrate the race win, so I think it's only fair, isn't it? So
Yeah,
Anyway,
okay, I'll take it. I'll take it.
there's always a chance for this weekend coming where we go to Mexico. So why don't you kick things off with your two-star predictions and make sure you write them down this time?
And you know what? I actually have. So impressive from me. Um, so for my two-star predictions, I've gone Liam Lawson points again. I think Liam Lawson is going to the Liam Lawson steam train has taken off, and he's going to be in the points once again. And I've gone with Colapinto to beat Albon again. I think Albon is in very much a poor run of form, and I see the two rookies should we say, the two rookies are in the field doing very well this weekend. So Lawson to get him points and Colapinto to beat Albon. You're on mute, mate.
Yeah, that would help. So I've got somewhat similar. So I've gone for Lawson to outqualify Sonoda. So sticking with the rookie theme. And then I've gone for Haas to score points in this race. They had a very strong weekend in Kota, so I think they'll back it up this weekend again. And then in qualifying, I've gone for Charles Leclerc to secure pole from Lando Norris. Carlos Sainz in third, Max Verstappen fourth, and Oscar Piastri in fifth. What have you got for your qualifying and race predictions?
Let's kick things off with qualifying. So I've actually gone with the Lando Norris pole position. I think he's bound to fumble the bag once again. So I've just put him in pole position. With Leclerc and Piastri second and third, Carlos Sainz in fourth, and Max Verstappen down in fifth. But for the race, I've actually gone with Lando Norris converting his pole position into a race victory, with Oscar Piastri joining him on the second step of the podium, making it a McLaren 1-2. Charles Leclerc third, with Carlos Sainz fourth, and Max Verstappen staying in fifth place.
And for my race predictions, I've gone for Charles Leclerc to make it two wins in a row. I've gone for Lando Norris second, Oscar Piastri rounding off the podium, Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen wrapping up the top five. But thank you all for listening to this episode of On the Grid podcast. We'll be back next week to look at Mexico, and we hope it delivers just as Cota did. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.